So I told you my little dream, a dream probably audacious, that making IIT alumni to become the world's #1. Today we are fourth after Stanford, Harvard, and Wharton. So #1 unicorn builder. And I told you that how important it is, this community, the IIT, the alumni, to make this happen. I'll give you an example. Now that you are seeing we got these speakers, it took all the help from our board members who are all IIT alumni to put together this session. And I told this dream first of all, we wanted to have the VCs who funds these unicorns and the founders who build these unicorns, put them all together. And here is the power of unicorn. So I found, through my alumni sources, we found 3 founders. You already heard Ali Godse, who built this. Now it's going to IPO. It's beyond unicorn, the Databricks. You will soon see Avinav Asthana, the CEO of Postman. And remember that these guys all start with 1 million, right? I invited Jishnu from Nexus Ventures, who gave him 1 million in 2013, and he closed the $5.6 billion valuation last year. And we will have the closing keynote by the CEO of Glean, who just raised $260 million round with a $4.6 billion valuation last September. And this connection was brought by Joy Das, who is the CEO and founder and partner of Sapphire Ventures. And I have another connection with Joy. I was at IIT Kharagpur. His dad was a legendary professor, Professor Yagnesh Das. He literally created our telecommunications department, and whatever little I have learned is thanks to Professor J. Das. So I'm going to invite Jay. He is known to have not only started this Sapphire Ventures, but delivered 14 IPOs, 8 unicorns, and I'm going to, and by the way, I told you that most difficult thing for a founder is to build the sales, right? So I told him how challenging it is. So he has funded a company called ThoughtSpot, and we also have the ex-CEO, he just recently, Sudheesh just recently left ThoughtSpot, an AI analytics platform, and in previous role, Sudheesh built from $0 billion to $9 billion revenue for over 7 years at Nutanix. So he is a living example of how you build this sales and the sales engine. So I'm going to please welcome Jay Das and Sudheesh Nair.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ashish.
He was throwing all sort of numbers there. Some of them were wrong. 9 billion was in valuation, not revenue.
Maybe Sudheesh, you can give a quick introduction.
Well, it is like a Malayali and a Bengali on stage, so we're going to talk about communism, right?
And rice and fish.
Rice and fish, yeah. Look, I think he's right in the sense that between Nutanix and ThoughtSpot last 14 years has been an amazing journey, and Jay has been with us from the very beginning because he's an investor in both companies. And we are standing right before the lunch thing, so let's get into it, Jay.
Yeah. And my background, other than I have a deep connection to IITs, although I didn't go to IIT myself, disappointed my dad very much. As Ashish mentioned, he started the ECE department at IIT Kharagpur, where I grew up, and then he went to IIT Kanpur, and I spent 4 years in IIT Kanpur. So I have my, with both those IITs, because I have lots of campus kids who are my friends, who I grew up with, who are all in the valley now. The only other thing I'll mention about my dad was I don't think people knew him as Professor J. Das. He always was known as Johnny Das because I don't know why he always wore a fedora to work. So that was like everybody I tell, like, hey, my dad, what was his name? And if I say Jogeshwar Das, nobody knows who he is, but Johnny Das, everybody knows about him. But anyway, we should get into, I know, Sudheesh, you have a hard stop. Can we go to the next slide? I don't know if you have.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I think let's start with it. I think the idea was how to build a company of consequence. And Jay and I, we were talking and decided instead of just talking about that, let's talk about what not to do. I thought that's probably the best way to do it. Maybe I'll start with the first point and then we'll go back and forth. I think, if you look at a company like Google, we talk about 2 founders, but there are probably hundreds, if not thousands of people who actually built the company. Built the company in meaningful ways. Companies, maybe we don't know them, but they have done really well in terms of what they have done in terms of productivity. They probably done really well in financially. They are having a fulfilled life. Often we talk about building within the context of just founding. So the first thing that I would like to say is that not everyone should found companies. It's not a divine calling. It's not something that everyone should be doing. You shouldn't do it just because you go into a party and everyone you're talking to are founders. I think if you want to build a company of lasting value, a company that actually means something, it starts with why am I building a company? And it is important to know there are multiple ways to build a company, and one of them is to go join a company where you admire the founders. That's what I did at Nutanix. The founders are, Dheeraj Pandey, Ajit, and Mohit. I knew all of them. I knew that they could do things I couldn't do. I was one of the first guys there. I built the company. I was not a founder. And there is nothing wrong with doing that.
Yeah, and look, and it is also, it's a really long and arduous journey sometimes, right? To be the founder, to kind of take it from the ground up. So it's not like everybody has to go build a company. As Sudheesh said, that the point that if you find people you like, you can join companies at different periods of the timelines of their growth, right? Because there are sometimes companies that are scaling from, say, 10 million to 50 million. You can add a lot more value than joining a company from 0 to 10. And you can, make a big difference in some of these companies also, right? But I will talk about one thing that is wherever company you found or you join, I think if you ignore the company culture and you don't get along with the company culture, it is really, really hard to be successful or be productive, right? Like one of the mantras I have is that if I ever in a company where I wake up in the morning and I don't want to go to work, I'm going to quit immediately. We founded Sapphire, and that is one of the culture things that we talk about with our kind of hires, our employees, is that, hey, do you guys want to come into work? Now, of course, it's remote work. They don't always come in. But that is the whole thing, that if you don't want to wake up and come in a culture that really supports you and makes you productive, you should not be, first of all, joining a company like that or found a company like that.
Sometimes people make culture to be this abstract thing that you won't know. To me, it's very simple. Like you said, when they pick up the phone, like let's say calling Friday night at 10 o'clock or wake up in the morning, do you feel excited about working with the people, no matter the problems? Are you excited about working with these people? And that is a good measuring stick. And if you don't feel like that, look, there will be good days and bad days. But if you are accumulating a lot of bad days because of people around you, that's a good time to leave. So that to me, Jay and I, we are very passionate about this. Culture is not what's on the website. It's not what, culture is what happens when you're not in the room. What do they say? What people talk about? When you make mistakes, who has your back? What do customers feel? Those things are culture. So if you don't feel like that, and if you don't feel like you can actually inculcate, you're not empowered to build that kind of a culture, you will not be able to build a company of consequence. Maybe I'll go to the next one, which is disregard customer feedback. This is actually one of those favorite things in the Silicon Valley, which is we sort of idolize people who say, screw the customer, they don't know what they're doing. We talk about Steve Jobs saying how, customers don't know what they want. We talk about Henry Ford saying, if you ask my customers what they want, they will say faster horses. These are all things that we listen and then sort of internalize. Now, the fact is, these are all true. However, starting a company requires finding things, connecting the dots, and finding things that doesn't exist yet. Because remember, customers are inside their tunnel. They have tunnel vision. They may not be able to tell you what to do. However, after you put that dot, it is so existentially important that you iterate, co-innovate with customers. So finding that balance between not listening to customers and listening to customers is extremely important in the beginning and the foundation and the arcs that you build of a company of consequence.
Yeah, I actually think that both Henry Ford and what Steve Jobs said, they were probably saying it tongue-in-cheek, because I think they did listen to their customers. Because if you look at the evolution of what they did, he came out with the iPod first, right? And the iPod kind of over time became, because people started doing different things with it. So it wasn't like Steve Jobs was not listening to customers, it's just the way he said it. And I think that is, again, the art, in that you have to take like 80% of what your customers are saying, but there is a 20% where you have to figure out, okay, this is what the customer really wants but is not articulating. And that is a very fine balance, and I think the best CEOs are usually the best product managers, and they are the ones who are actually able to figure that out, where they will get the customer feedback and figure out 80% of the product and then build some other stuff around it, which is kind of wows the customer, saying, hey, it meets a need that we were not really thinking about, right? And then going to about the long-term focus versus short-term focus. And again, this is a very difficult thing to do, because you have investors, you have if you're a public company, you have people kind of going in and saying, what are your quarterly results? But that is what, if you are going to found a company and be the CEO, you kind of have to have both a short-term focus, but also a long-term kind of vision and the product roadmap, what you're trying to build. Because that is what I always ask my CEOs whenever we talk. It's not about the numbers. The numbers are great, but another mantra we have is you sell on a narrative and you close on the numbers. And that is the narrative, is that what is your vision? What is the long-term you're going to build? And what helps there is that if you have this narrative and this vision, not only are you able to land customers, because customers also want to be on a journey with you as you're building the product and what you're building, but it also helps you recruit. Because if you can't sell the narrative and the product vision, what you're going to build, how you're going to change a category, you won't be able to recruit talent, because otherwise, why will they come and work with you?
He mentioned two things that I want to highlight. First is the product managers. I find so many exceptional product managers who are starting companies. And I can tell sometimes that managing products in a larger company is probably their path, but they see a lot of others are doing it, so they're also doing it. And what they miss often is the aspiration, the ambition, and the courage. So look, not every feature should become a product. And every product is not destined to be a platform. And not every platform should be a company. So distinguishing whether it should be a platform in a large company versus a feature in a product, it's actually extremely important. However, no matter where you start, often if you don't have the aspirations to take the customer to a much better place as multiple arcs of a company, if you don't have that kind of aspiration, even if it is a feature, if you think that I'm just going to take this feature and turn this into a $10 million business and then sell it, that's my exit plan. Nothing wrong with it, but that alone won't do it unless you're aspirationally asking the primary question, why am I starting a company? Often the answer is, I don't like what I see. I see this unfair way our customers are dealing with this, and I'm going to change it. So having that long arc, but at the same time tethered with short-term reality. Like you have this arc, you're extremely courageous, extremely ambitious, but at the same time, you're also trying to figure out, how do I checkpoint that? That's why I like go-to-market and 90 days. Every 90 days, you're able to checkpoint to see, am I going in the right direction or not? You know why? Because customers can say yes or no. Just like VC meetings, I always say this to Jay, VC meetings will always say, go well. They have absolutely no upside in telling you suck, right? In fact, if you walk around asking people, I have this idea, should I start a company? I guarantee you, 99 out of 100 people will tell you it's a good idea because they have no upside in telling you no. The one person who might tell you no might be somebody that you love, and you probably don't value their opinion too. So customers saying that I'm going to give you my money, that's the ultimate validation. So having that long arc of aspiration, short checkpoints of 90 days is the right balance. Next one is micromanaging.
Yeah.
Look, most of us in this room are exceptionally good at a lot of things. Let's take that as a baseline. You won't be in this room if you're not really, really good at a bunch of things. That means that you probably can also figure out the rest. You might be an extremely technical founder. It's not like go-to-market and sales productivity is out of your capabilities. However, when you are trying to build a company, you are competing in a fabric of a lot of other companies around you trying to go after the same dollars. So you're trying to share shift the dollars. You want them to spend it on you, which means that time is of essence. So when you go recruit, for example, a CRO or a sales leader, it should not be because, look, I just don't have enough time to do sales, so I'm going to look for somebody. If you think that every function is its own company, you're trying to find CEOs for each one of those functions. And the thing that usually stands in the way of doing that is the ego and the inability, the insecurities that we have in terms of truly finding the best people, empowering them to do what they do really well. And micromanagement, all of these things actually are symptoms of the insecurity and ego that often CEOs and founders and other key leaders in companies display. If you're able to check that out, a company of consequence can be built. Thank you.
True. Then I'll hit the last point, which is very dear and near to my heart, which is cash burn. You see examples of WeWork, even examples of OpenAI, spending so much money trying to get to revenues. But if you go back and look at some of the trillion-dollar companies, if you look at Microsoft, they actually were never cash flow negative. They built the company, a trillion. They took $1 million of VC investment a long time ago just to get somebody on their board. That's it. Google, I think, spent like maybe 50 million or maybe 80 million to get to where they are, to get to cash flow break even. So, being cash flow and being very focused on how you don't spend a lot of money to build your company is actually a very good thing to have. And I think I'll ask maybe Sudheesh to talk more about how you think Gen AI is going to affect the cash burn and how people are going to build these companies.
Very few people know that J actually stands for JAI. He's a passionate, if you are following him on Twitter, you will see I'm talking about generative AI. J with generative AI. Look, I think, recently someone said that there will be multiple multi-billion-dollar businesses built by people, less than 50 people in a company. And I do believe that is actually true because there are tactical help that AI can provide. It's not just about doing co-piloting, but it is, if you think about the process of building a company, a 300-person company can probably be now done by less than 50 people because the kind of things that you used to do in product marketing, in SDRs, in ISRs, in SC world, all of these things are actually getting agentified.
Yes.
Right? So there is a direct correlation between what AI can do for your business in terms of the denominator of the business. But I do believe that there is something else that you can also do, which is the ability to be part of this wave that is actually being created. But that requires an extreme opinionated view of metrics. And this is something that Sapphire is really passionate about. And as a CEO, I always felt that this is one area that I can do better. Because when you're building a company, pretty much every problem seems like a primary problem that you have to solve. In the sense that the marketing team wants like a friggin' billboard on 101. I mean, what are you going to say? No? Because everyone else has it, everyone says that, it's on Twitter, all of that kind of stuff. How are you going to measure the value? They will say, oh yeah, I'm going to give you so kind of metrics. But ultimately, though, all of those things should translate into sales. And the problem in the enterprise business is, at least, that every deal that actually gets closed, there will be a lot of people attributing and saying, I'm responsible for it. Engineering will say, product managers will say, marketing will say, channel will say, SCs will say, professional services will say, and win notes get longer and longer and longer with like Oscar speech of thanking everybody. It is very difficult to figure out what's working. However, when a deal is lost, a customer churns, when a deal didn't close, a competitor won, the win alerts will be, the loss alerts will be only 2 lines. Budget disappeared, right? So my point is, when I talk about this point between generative AI, the thing that I would like to highlight is building an operational nerve within the organization that collects data at extremely high definition. Marketing ops, engineering ops, sales ops, all connected together in finance ops in a way that enables you to go after the problems at every level at different dimensionality. And that's important. So I think companies that actually build that, where you think about now data collection, data cleaning, data labeling, AI can really help. Even at a smaller scale, you can now have significant amount of help that startups otherwise didn't have. So I'm very passionate about building efficient companies for both numerator and denominator. I really believe AI will help.
And one thing before we open it up for questions, I just came back from Virginia looking at a company. They're at 4 million ARR, 5 million in revenues with 11 people and 3 engineers. And basically, their velocity of developing code has just skyrocketed because they're not just using Copilot, they just have rewritten, like they're eating their own dog food by using their own AI platform to generate better code. So as you start things, you have to really think it's Gen AI. It can be solving any problem you want. But once you build a company, you really have to think about how I can use Gen AI to make this a much more efficient and less cash-dependent company.
So we wanted to leave at least 10 minutes for questions, and we are exactly 10 minutes to close. So we'd love to take some questions, and I think there are mics up there. Feel free to walk up and ask questions about anything. And call us out if we said something that didn't make sense or if you disagree with. That's fine too. Of course, Preeti is the first one.
Thanks, Sudheesh. Great talk. My question, one thing I saw that I would love to hear about is about hiring. How do you make sure that you're hiring the right team members, and how do you make sure they're successful, and how do you make sure that if suppose it doesn't work out, what are the best ways to take care of it?
The first one is do not hire without doing references. I've become a huge believer that interviews are a waste of time most of the time. Because most people at exec level, sales, marketing, engineering, these leaders, they can interview really well. So I found that interviews are a necessary thing, but it is not as effective as it used to be. But it is important to have face-to-face references. Don't make reference checks one of those things that you're going to check because you have to close the hire. You really want to close this person, and then you get on that reference call by saying, hope that, no, please don't say anything negative, I just want to hire him or hire her. So that's number one. Number two is, no matter what, you should assume that you'll make mistakes. And this is the thing that, again, I struggle with, is that be very, very good at culling bad hires, bad fits as fast as possible. I know everyone will say it, but it's one of the hardest things to do. It's one of the most important things to do. The third part is enabling. If you hire the best people and you keep firing and you are not able to find something, then you are not enabling them well inside the company. And that's not just a documentation. It might be culture. It might be something that is not connecting, which means that you need to go back and look at why is it that we are not able to enable and empower some of the really good people who are coming into the company, and the antibodies are pushing them out.
Yeah, being self-aware, not only personally, but also when you run a company or run a team, is so critical. And I think that is one of the main points. It's why are these people not being successful when you hire them and you to let them go?
Thanks, Preeti.
Thanks.
If you can just say your name, that'd be great. Yeah, thanks.
Sure. Hey, Rishi Jaluria, thanks so much for this. It's a super helpful session. As we kind of think about ending on the topic of Gen AI and tie that into founding new companies, I think one of the overarching theses out there is this lowers barriers to entry to create new companies and maybe creates a lot of people ripe for disruption. How do you think about that thesis, and what does this do to kind of the pace of disruption? I mean, just thinking about the BI space, you saw Bob J get disrupted by Click, by Tableau, and then by ThoughtSpot. What does this do to that? Thanks.
Yeah, so I think, look, it's not going to be that easy to displace incumbents. Because, yeah, you can build up companies that are maybe structurally more efficient, but distribution game is still number one about anything, especially in enterprise software. That's what I focus on. It is very hard to replace a Salesforce distribution power, right? I was just talking to a CEO that sold his company to HPE, and he said that all his salespeople are at 200% commission, quota, because they just have access to the CIOs. So as you you just don't take somebody head on. You kind of have to say, hey, are there areas where the incumbents are not coming in? Or are there some ways that I'm going to be able to collect data that is going to make my models better, that will be able to replace that the incumbent doesn't have? So I think that is going to be extremely critical, and you can't just take an incumbent head on.
Yeah, the fundamentals haven't changed in the sense that customers still want to see continuous value delivery for the money that they're spending. The difference is in the world of SaaS, they are open to negotiating that every year. and re-evaluating, are you the right person, which means that in SaaS companies, you got to keep selling every year to every customer that you ever closed. And that's a fundamental shift from the old world. With Gen AI, that doesn't change. In the enterprise world, I'm also an enterprise software guy. That also means that there are lots of new things going to be built. Every company that we know in enterprise is going to be rebuilt. There will be a new Splunk, there will be a new Workday, there will be a new Twilio. All of these things will be rebuilt. The question is, will that be just because I sprinkle AI? No. Incumbents will hold the power. You will have to shoot your way up the mountain, and it's much easier to shoot down. Thanks for the question.
Hi, my name is Mehul Vastavala. I had two things. One is, how do you reduce the cost of hiring? Because in US, it's very expensive. But when you hire in other countries like India, you have all these late night calls and kind of micromanaging, and for me, it's been kind of troubling. The second thing is, how do you achieve, with all this passion and running here and there after one technology and the other, get work-life balance? Because, my doctor said you sleep at 10, 10:30. So I don't know how you can create ventures and also get that.
Well, I think reducing cost of hiring, it's not a short answer for any of these things. However, I will say that if you did what we said, the second point I talked about, culture, it is the single biggest motivator for people to join. If you start with a good hot molecule and you have an amazing culture, these people will keep bringing people.
Yes.
I've seen this happen again and again and again. So go invest in your culture, your cost of hiring will go down. It's a practical advice. Whether you believe it or not, you will see it happening. So that's number one. Work-life balance, I'll be very honest with you, the way I think of it is, if you truly believe that you are doing something that actually makes the world a little better in some ways, if you're truly passionate about what you're doing, and if you're really good at talking about that to the people that you love in your life, because ultimately all of these things will go away. Someone told me once, do not love anything that doesn't love you back, or who will not love you back. All of this stuff will go away, and when you have chips are down, there will be a few people around you. Do not take them for granted as much as possible, and talk to them why you are passionate about this. What I've found is, your significant other will let you make that 10:30 call every night if they feel like you are loving doing it.
Right.
If they feel like you are freaking grinding and complaining and whining about everything happening and still getting on that 10:30 call, your quality of life will go down because he or she will make sure it goes down. That's the reality. So find a good place. Create a good place. Everything will actually work out.
By the way, I have a little bit of a thing that you, as a founder, you really don't have work-life balance. You just have to do something that, at least for me, that your life and work can go together. I don't have a problem like talking to CEOs. My weekends are half filled with talking to CEOs, but I don't mind it because I love kind of that intellectual challenge and curiosity and the discussion. So you have to build something and work on something that almost feels like it's not work.
We all work for either ego, income, or impact. The challenge is that often we don't talk about that to people around us in our lives, outside of professional life. If you share more, they will give you more bandwidth. And that is where most of the stress is coming from.
Thanks.
Thank you. Maybe we'll take two more.
Yeah.
I'm lucky then.
We'll make it quick, yeah. We will stop in exactly 12:30.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, we designed this, and we have to find the speakers who can hold on to you right before lunch. So I'm glad that I see that line. Unfortunately, they have to leave. But two more questions.
We'll make
please,
it
right.
Well, I'm lucky then. I can't speak in Bengali, but I can say Cheta Sukumanle.
Oh,
Oh, well, I'm not a Malayali though.
well, that worked. I understood. That's the whole point of language. So go ahead.
I'm glad I brought a smile on your face. I just wanted to know how to create the balance in making a Batman create the law. Because as of now, everyone is using AI, but we need to follow the law and order. So what's coming up in future when it comes to maintaining and managing integrity and ethics?
It's a hard question. I think the challenge is, you're going to have guardrails around it, right? People are going to say that, people are building, it's again, an area where you can invest and build companies to be more ethical, to provide guardrails around it. But just like any other technology, right, there's going to be good uses and there's going to be bad uses, right? You have nuclear power that can drive these AI things, but you also use it as a bomb to kind of destroy things, right? So I think that is the old age kind of ever kind of going thing where you have technology and people will build companies to safeguard AI.
I'll say two quick things. Number one, I'm actually encouraged by the fact that the companies that are creating such an early stage, there already is an active conversation. That's actually a good thing. Most of the time, things are like the whole house, the building is on fire. That's when people start talking about it. So that's number one. Number two, when you look at all this, like for example, synthetic data creation for AI, you can see that there's a lot of things going into that already with this kind of caveat in mind. So I am actually optimistic. Things will get probably a little darker before it gets brighter, but the fact that we're starting so early makes me feel very optimistic about where things are.
Thank you very much. I just hope not to pay a lot when someone come with integrity issues. Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it, yeah. Last question, sorry, thank you so much for the time. I'll be available on LinkedIn, so is Jay. So.
Sure. Oh, thank you very much. I'm lucky that I'm the last one. You mentioned the agentifying things, if that's the right word, and making the company efficient using the AI agents. But also, I need some input from you, especially in the compressed schedule of a startup, that how do you have human connection? Because that's probably the most important whenever you are doing any venture. So
let me just do it in 30 seconds, actually, as much as possible. I know they're giving me red light here. Look, I think the way people learn, the thing that is most exciting about generative AI compared to everything else, so transform models and all of that, if you think about how we learn as a human being, like a little baby, there are three things that goes into it. Compute power, the brain is growing, more protein. Number two, the amount of data, more stuff telling her, and she is actually learning more. And the last is social, going to kindergarten, learning from each other. If you look at how models are learning, that's exactly how it is learning, which means that there is a similarity between how models are learning and people are learning. So when you start thinking about the APIs that are built on top of this, I really believe that it is actually transferable between how we learn, and which means that the agents are built to talk to machines, other machines, older, newer, or humans. So there is an abstraction layer that I believe is actually going to be created that makes it possible for these things to sit on top of other stacks. Unlike anything else in the past where machine to machine was so vastly different from voice and audio and everything else that we used to communicate, by removing the bandwidth problem that others had with this, which doesn't have in this, I believe the opportunities for humans to express itself to computers to get more, where our brains are coming together and talking to a bunch of other machine brains, that's where I believe the agentification is actually going to produce more value. What I just said probably didn't make sense because it's not a 30-second conversation, but I'm very passionate about where this is going to go.
Okay, I have a follow-up question that I think catch you later.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.